Recording in progress.
Going to call the March 25th, 2025 Infrastructure Committee meeting to order. The first item are the minutes from the January meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those?
Motion approved.
Second. All in favor? Fine. Okay, the next item is borough projects, but I'd like to take a little license here and go out of order because we have some rare guests at our meeting, so I'd like to give them a chance to, and I'll even do the public comment out of order so that they can say what they have to say and get on with their days, unless they want to stay and listen to the update about
education too, but.
Okay, well, there'll be a rather uplifting update about the Narberth Avenue Bridge after this part. But why don't we start off with the stormwater bump out analysis. You can just give us a summary of where we are, and then we'll give these nice folks a chance to speak.
Yeah, so where we are now is we had a survey completed about a couple weeks ago. So we have a full survey plan at our desk that we're starting to use to put together our proposed plan set. So we're looking to get those worked on and completed and have a draft done for next month's meeting. So that would be the April meeting. And then for the May meeting, we're looking to have final plans and ready to go. Have our contract specs created and ready to go to put out to bid around like early June. So we're well on track and looking forward to getting it and continuing to move forward.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It's stuff that we already know, but folks might also not know. Could you just give us kind of like a brief synopsis to provide the basis for why we're going through the process and kind of what it means?
Yeah, so the bump out project themselves is to help with the borough's ongoing stormwater and pollution reduction plan set by DEP. It's a statewide mandate. So these bump outs are in conjunction to the original 4 bump outs that we did a couple of years ago. We're kind of continuing that process of installing some more. So we picked out 4 locations that we thought would be good candidates in terms of constructability, in terms of the amount of water, the amount of runoff that's going to those locations. And the idea is that these bump outs will help filter out sediment out of the water before it runs downstream and into the streams and waterways. Do you guys have any?
I think it's because there's a lot of kind of like jargony things. I think that one of the context for this, right? The state requires municipalities to provide for water quality. So water runs off of our roadways, it runs off our existing kind of pavement, and goes into our streams at some point. It collects a lot of schmutz and other things along the way. So the state has required all sorts of municipalities, not just Narberth, but anyone within kind of a certain geographic area or a certain kind of basin.
Every municipality in the Commonwealth, effectively.
Okay.
Some, kind of where you're getting at, some are more impacted by the requirement than others.
Right.
In places such as this where we're more built out.
Yeah.
As opposed to, theoretically, rural Pennsylvania is also, but they have much more open land. Theirs is targeted more towards farmland runoff as opposed to like stormwater runoff from our streets, from a history of building up our communities without taking stormwater management control. We used to just discharge water in the creek as fast as we could.
Right. If you're building something in 1904 and you're just throwing it into the creek, or even
30 years ago.
It's
it's really the regulations we run under now are 2005. It's really kind of where we are.
was where it started.
And how are we doing with that? How are we measured for how successful we are?
So there, it's a little dicey on how DEP quantifies it, but they did come up with a way to say, okay, like based off of the area of your municipality, here's how much, and based off of these certain criteria, here's how much sediment you need to remove from your streams, or here's how much sediment you need to take out of your out of your water before it reaches the streams. So they have a number that we kind of help generate, and we're looking at we're probably about 20 to 30% of the way through that right now, given the bump outs that we did previously.
And the previous land, and the land developments that have happened recently.
So-
So we're
I mean,
finding
yes.
these bump outs are very successful, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they're a great tool. You know, giving-
Are there other tools? Like, I don't see any other municipalities doing that.
So,
Yeah.
I think to that end, here's probably good. So, if you have, there's a lot of municipalities where they have land, and they have various stormwater basins. The most complex part of Narberth is, it's effectively an integrated suburb where there's very little land that exists. So, you know, the locations to be able to install various stormwater facilities are, in this case, when we have these land developments that have occurred in downtown, they've had to put in basins underground, which are all collecting water. But then outside of that, the only open land in the borough is the park down here. 201 Sabine is, that property up there is open, but it's actually, that drains towards Lower Marion, towards Schuylkill River, so it's not even in part of the calculations. So really, it's just the park down here.
What was the
How about the new one?
Yeah, the new one as well.
All of the, when I say the park, I say collectively, the park down here.
But there's a thing about the Elm Grove Park, that we don't own the stream there. When we bought that property, we only got part of
But
it.
I would just say even
Because
that,
we did discuss, we brought that up, because it's a good question, we did bring that up, and I think you had said, I don't want to jump ahead of you, that what you would actually have to do in order to actually get credit for it was not feasible, especially considering we didn't have both sides of the street.
so there's that, but here's the other aspect. So in the plan, where bump outs is one of them, also in the plan is the land developments that have occurred down there. Also in there is a stormwater system in the parking lot here, and rain guard facility at the library, and a whole riparian system along Haverford Avenue, and one on Wynwood, and one around the tennis courts.
Yeah.
So like, all those facilities are also already needed to get to where we're trying to get.
In terms of the PRP, it was like, considering all of the things that you just described, even with that, we needed to plan for roughly how many bump outs overall?
roughly about 20.
20.
Yeah.
And we've installed how many so far?
We've done 4. Yeah.
So I'd like to actually get started with the public comment, and then you guys can actually speak.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Are we in the public comment?
we're entering it. I'm about to
We
enter it.
got notice yesterday, so there
We're-
should have been more here, but.
We're not that formal, but if you could just state your name.
Yeah, Tom Henry, I live up on Conway Avenue.
Tom Henry.
Yep.
Okay, so, go ahead.
Bump outs, the 20, 28 somewhere on the PRP, is that correct? Number of bump outs?
Yeah, 20, yeah, 20, 24.
Does that
23,
include south
23,
side as well?
I'm sorry?
Does that include south side? Because I haven't seen any proposals for south side.
It does include the south side. We have in our overall plan, we have maybe about half a dozen or so planned. Right now we're kind of focusing, since this is only going to be bump outs 4 through 8, we're kind of focusing on the areas that will give us the biggest bang for our buck. Essentially, the areas that will give us the most credit, that DEP is looking for. So the ones on the south side are not as they don't give us as much bang for our buck as what we're proposing.
Well, that brings up my next question then. Conway, you already have one at the end of Conway at Windsor.
Yep.
You're proposing one on my block, 200 block, just up from the existing one.
Yeah.
What kind of added benefits is that? And why not go someplace else what we don't have a bump out already? I mean, is that extra bump out a block above the existing one really that beneficial? Or are you just trying to meet numbers?
It surprisingly is beneficial. So the location where the existing bump out is now and the location where the proposed one will be, both of those locations receive a lot of water. And so that's really what creates that, that credit number is how much water is received by the bump out. And both of those locations do receive at least an acre's worth of area of water that falls within that area.
But and I'm not following completely on this, maybe you have calculations you can show us in terms of sediment reduction and reduction in flow severity, or a different word, between Dudley, Stewart and Windsor. You've got one collecting all the volume already. Was that undersized based on the drainage area? So you have to put another one in to meet numbers? Or I just don't understand the concept behind putting one in just above an existing one. If you got calculations and numbers, maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, they show, it's, yeah, yes and no to answer your question. So it is in a separate drainage area. But some water that meets, the proposed one near your property, some of that water does, eventually make its way to the bump out that's currently there. A lot of that is new area though. So a lot of that will be in a different, a lot of that water will come from a different location than where the,
How can that be?
it's, it's.
I mean, I can see if it was on the other side of the street to pick up that curb. But if it's on the same side of the street, a block above it, drainage the same area, I don't see how it's draining a different area.
So
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the concept here.
Maybe a way. So let's say if you have, you're coming down the street, so water basically, let's say the road, if the road you have properties eventually are grading towards a property, or towards the road. If you have one here, you're gonna capture water, think of it more or less like in a V going up. And then when you come down the next one, you have the next V. So even if there's one here and here, you're still picking up this properties on either side.
Well, the crown of the road
Yeah.
will stop the water from going from one side to the other. If the water's coming down Stewart onto Conway, it goes into the gutter line on the east side of Conway, into the existing bump out. Now, I can understand if the bump out was on the opposite side of Conway, when it's picking up the curbage from the whole way down Conway, from Sabine, even some of Sabine probably, down on the west side of Conway. But if they're both on the east side, that's the exact same drainage area except for the 200 block that the one at Stewart's picking up. So, and I'm trying to visualize how, because the crown of the road separates the two. And I'm not seeing how the water gets from one side to the other, from the west side over to the east side to make it profitable to put in, both in money, in terms of sediment reduction, and in terms of flow, slowing down the flow. Putting a second one on Conway versus putting one someplace else in the borough where they don't have any bump outs yet, to pick up that drainage area. So I'm just confused why you got that extra one in there on Conway, to pick up. Well, essentially what happens then is the only thing the one at the end of Conway's picking up at Windsor is the drainage area between Stewart and Windsor. Right.
The loading ratios of each pump out. So you might, that's picking up X amount ratio, that's picking up X amount loading ratio.
Yeah, that,
You maybe explain that.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. So the existing bump out is picking up everything, up to Stewart, and there are other factors that kind of go into like where water goes, and there's the way that the road is graded. So at Stewart, the roadway is graded a little differently than the overall road itself. Like the intersection is a little bit different, and the if there's I forget if there's any inlets at that intersection. I don't believe there are, but if there were inlets, then the inlets can make the drainage areas seem different than what they are in reality. But then to your point too, that the drainage areas will split a little bit. Like the one that we're proposing will will take in some water that the existing one currently is taking also. But the majority of it will be new drainage, new area. Yeah.
Maybe your visual will help me. I'm not getting it, because I sit out there and watch the stormwater, it comes down Stewart, and comes down the west side, or east side of Conway. It doesn't flow across the crown of the road.
You said
on the west side.
the same water is gonna be running through two
Both of
two
But
bump outs.
why?
Yeah, I'm just
I don't know
rephrasing
why,
what
because I don't understand the concept, because you've got one designed already for that whole drainage area. Why do you need a second one when you don't have a bump out someplace else in the borough to pick up some other drainage area? I don't understand how it works. I saw them out there surveying, I watched the stormwater flows when we had the heavy rains. And even coming down off Stewart, which doesn't have a big slope, it's not rushing across the street. It's not rushing anywhere other than down to this bump out here at Windsor. I mean, that's the way the water flows. And I'm not able to visualize why that bump out is really needed if the one at Windsor was designed properly to catch the drainage area above Windsor.
Okay, I think they're trying to draw something here for you.
It's a very sloppy drawing, but yeah, I'm drawing it.
And Eric, we have a map up if you want to use that.
Yeah.
Pointing.
Okay. He spent more time on this, I just want to make sure I can try and explain what, right, so this one is here, that's going to be capturing from the crown half over, right? That drainage area here. This one up here without picking up and putting the sediment reduction of this drainage area, because this will like pick up so much loading.
Yeah.
Right, you're only going to have so much loading that this one is actually going to get credit for.
Yeah.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Okay, well, you have an answer for it.
So hopefully this, I think one, there's the drainage area, and correct me if I'm wrong, he spends more time with the technical code of this, we'll see if I can describe it. You have an inlet, there's a drainage area, right, a rain garden pump out. There's a drainage area that might get to it, but then kind of getting to the discussion about what we're being held to and what the standard is and how the amount of sediment that has to be reduced is being calculated. So when you have a stormwater facility, it has a certain, it's basically like a loading ratio. It's how much sediment reduction is that system capable of reducing. And there's a threshold at what point where it can only capture so much water. So like here's a real easy example, and it's kind of the same idea. Let's say there's a stormwater inlet in the street. You can, one of these things you can install is called the sediment trap. Basically, if you ever see a construction site, there's a bag of inlet, it's that kind of idea. But there's a very strict limit on how big of a drainage area is allowed to get to that inlet to be able to even consider that for use. So in this case, same thing applies to a bump out. There's only so much area at which you can get the credit for reducing the sediment flowing into that bump out. So as far as the drainage area, right, so the current one is somewhere around here, right? On Conway, just above Windsor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that, if we look at drainage, so, right, if there's a crown of the road, this side is going along this gutter line coming down. But if we have this center line, that means we're looking this way and up that way. So water's flowing, yes, it is flowing down the gutter line of Conway, and it's also flowing down Stewart and coming down Conway. But at the same time, we're also picking up, each of these houses are slightly pitched up. So the water from all of these properties here is also, I think Dudley might even come, just Dudley sit higher, I think water even comes down this way. But if we just look at these houses, so if we have an inlet, a bump out here, he is taking water that's basically coming down Conway, but it's also these properties here. So this drainage area is picking up all of these houses and eventually flowing out to this point. If there is one here, you're now picking up the drainage area coming down Conway and coming down Stewart, and the sediment reduction is occurring at this point in this facility. As opposed to, and you're not ever going to get the amount of sediment reduction at this facility from all of this. So basically this is capturing a pretty substantive drainage area and getting sediment reduction credit. This one down here is capturing this drainage area here and getting that sediment reduction credit.
So the one at Windsor was either under-designed for the entire watershed because you wouldn't get total credit for the sediment, or it's over-designed for the area that's gonna capture after the new one's put in. Or the new one's gonna have to be at least 50 feet long, like the one at Windsor, to pick up all that other drainage area that Windsor's picking up.
So the reality is they're only capturing, it's kind of balancing. There is, the size of that facility is going to capture X amount of sediment based on the drainage area. None of them are going to capture as much. So here, in this portion of the borough, almost the entire north side, down above Windsor, all flows downhill to Windsor. Eventually it gets picked up, or not picked up by the undersized storm sewer,
Right.
down to the creek. That's capturing as much credit as we really could without making the size of it. Right, but now you're going to be like, you have your sediment reduction here, X amount. This is net capture. We're still net plus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
So,
go ahead. I'd like to
just let me
wrap up.
I know, it's 3 minutes. I
Okay, good, it's all good, it's all good.
Everybody else sitting here.
Okay.
So it's a little looser here on the time, but this month.
The initial calculations for the one at Windsor for sediment reduction were based on the entire watershed above it.
Well, it was, the one that's currently there today was designed for the area up to Stewart. I think
The whole
that's,
thing, the whole basin from Essex down to Price, down from Sabine, the whole way down, right?
well, that's kind of when you look at the entire drainage network
But
across the
I'm trying to
borough.
get at the design of that thing, because that
Yeah.
thing's 50 feet long, and if I got a 50-foot bump out in front of my house, I'm gonna be a little disturbed about that, because not only are we talking about water control, we're all talking about restrictions of parking, which is horrible in the wintertime. Especially when you got these neighbors across the street that have 5 or 6 cars of their own, and there was 10 of them parking in front of my house. Now you've got a 50 or 60-foot bump out where they can't park, especially in the wintertime. So not only am I concerned about how these things were designed and what credit you're taking in the PRP for the MS4 permit, but also whether that was over-calculated initially to get increased reduction in sediment. Now you have to go back, and the only sediment you're going to capture is that little area from Stewart down. So your reduction in sediment control, in my mind, is greatly reduced, where the one at Stewart is going to pick up everything else, and now you're going to have a huge bump out there to pick up all that. And that besides the fact that you really should start taking a look at the south side as well, and the Haverford Rain Garden, or whatever else you're going to be doing. But that, to me, is the critical. You got one at Dudley, which you're going to remove 3 or 4 parking spaces. So I have apartment people coming over to my street, and then you're going to remove five parking spaces on my street. Where does everybody go? Parking in the city, this borough is ridiculous. I don't care what people say, parking is ridiculous, and the new parking regulations didn't help at all. That's off the subject. So my concern is the actual design, and what I'm going to be looking at outside my door, a 50, 60-foot long pump out, similar to the one at Windsor, is going to be smaller, and how the adjustments and the calculations for the PRP and the MS4 permit changes because of the change in the drainage area. I just see it better used someplace else in the borough where there are no pump outs, and I really wish you guys would consider that instead of putting another one on Conway now. Maybe later you'll need it, but look someplace else in the borough to put the 5th or 6th ones, whatever ones you're talking about now. I don't know how many you have in the borough now.
4.
4? Okay, the 5th and 6th one then. Other than Conway, where you already have one, pick someplace else in the borough, let them share in the agony of having these things outside their house. I mean, they're not pretty looking the first 5, 6, 7 years, that's for sure. I'm still into the stuff. I mean, they're taken care of well by the borough, I don't have a problem with that. It's just the bushes themselves haven't established themselves. Anywho, I really would like to make a comment that you really, should really consider someplace else in the borough other than a street where you already have a bump out. That was that's what I was getting at in this whole 3-minute discussion.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'd like to give your friend there a chance to speak. Could you
I
just say?
apologize for the time.
Maylene Gallagher, and on 200 block of Grayling.
Any additional comments, or did he say that all?
Parking is one of them. Believe it or not, even though it's a dead-end street, it's a very busy dead-end street between the church and most of the retail people in Narberth park on my street because it's one of the only streets that doesn't have 2-hour parking. So there's never a parking space on the street. And I look and you're putting one almost right across the street from each other, you're putting 2 on the same street. It's only a 1-block street, and I'm worried about removing of parking, and also, you know, when you're turning in, you got one here, and then you go up a little bit, and there's one here. And I'm just wondering, you know, I understand the purpose of them. I'm not sure that Grayling Avenue has that much runoff, but I guess you've studied it. I would put 2 on Narberth Avenue because of the church parking, but why 2? Why 2 on the same street, almost right across the street from each other?
So the reason why we'd like to put 2 there is because the street itself kind of acts as a localized low point, if you will. So there's water that drains to Grayling from both sides of Grayling. You know,
It's a very flat street, and the houses are very flat. I don't know how it runs. If anything, it runs probably from the school parking lot, maybe a little bit down that way.
Yeah, and from there too, yes. Yeah, so there's a surprising amount of water that does make its way onto Grayling. So when we looked at that, we saw just how much just how much runoff there was coming onto Grayling. We thought that those would be both great locations for them. I understand the concern about parking. So we're trying to keep the bump outs to a 40-foot long maximum length, and that should only affect about 2 to 3 parking spaces per bump out.
Okay, that's a lot of parking.
Okay, well that was.
Yeah.
I'd like to wrap this up unless you guys have any other.
No,
And I'll tell you, I mean, if you know the dynamic of the street, they're all apartments. So every building has 3 or 4 cars per building. Not every building has a driveway, and most of those apartment buildings do not allow their tenants to park in their driveway. So they're on the street. So I'm lucky I have a driveway. If any of my friends come, they have to park in my driveway because there's never any parking on the street. During the day, it's all the mailmen, and it's Chinese restaurant, and it's the place next to it. It's 3 people from the dentist. I could tell you who comes in every morning, and they leave at 5, and then all the apartment people come in at 5. So it's working now that it's capacity, day and night capacity, and then we have the daycare, the nursery school across the street that twice a day, well 3 times a day. It's like 9 and then noon and then late afternoon. They're parking in the middle of the street to try to drop their kids off. It's crazy because there's just no parking there. And here you want to take, what you're saying, 3 on each side of the street parking. I now have trouble at least once a week with somebody parking on half of my driveway. I can show you pictures where, I've had to call the police before and they say, well, don't you know who owns the car? And I was like, no, I don't. Can you get them off my driveway? Because there's barely, the next apartment next to me has 3 spaces, exactly 3. And the people who live there know, you park tight, you can get in. But people that, are not from the street, they hang over my driveway, they hang over the other driveway. So it's difficult already. And I think I'd even be okay with 1, but I just don't understand 2. And they were literally almost across, it looks like one's in front of the driveway, but I'm assuming it's like in front of 204 maybe. It looks like it's at the driveway at 204. And then one is almost at the corner, which I guess you're taking up that corner space because it looks like unless this is, I know it's not to scale what you sent me, but it looks like it's right smack at the corner, which, it might only be taking away 2 parking spaces rather than 3, but how about a fire truck trying to get around the corner if you're right on the corner? and that's right where they drop off the kids and stuff, I don't know, it concerns me, especially
I
when
think
you
it's a
discuss
good,
it.
I think it's
That's
a
all.
good feedback.
Yeah, I
Can you
know, I
look at
think,
that at least, I mean, just consider that,
yes.
you know, that street is, and, I mean, I
Which
know
one
that
do
if
you
you
like?
turn it to 2-hour parking, then maybe I lose some of the daytime craziness, but
Which one do you like better?
Well, I think
Yeah.
maybe to that end, of the two,
of the two,
which
which
one
would
do
I
you see
rather?
less, if there was
Less
one,
dis-
which one is less disruptive?
Well, you know, I hate for like my fellow mailmen and like not to have parking anywhere, they're parking at the church now and like, but, I would rather there really only be one of them.
But which one of these two?
Yeah, which one would be easier?
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would think, I hate to say it, the one that's on my side of the street, the one that's on the even side of the street, just because of the church craziness, I don't know, it'd be so hard right there,
Okay.
but that's all I will.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim, please.
So, I was gonna say, the one on, just as a preface, the one on Dudley, I think is actually really well located because it seems to be mostly within a zone that is no parking here to corner. That's at least.
That's what it looks like it's down that far.
So, I was wondering if
That
the
makes it
same
a
thing could be
dangerous
done
turn.
on Grayling, because there's also a really wide no parking here to corner. At the end of Grayling here, there happens to be a van parked in this picture right here. But, like, why can't these things generally be, you know, where there's no parking already?
I think the
Yeah.
biggest reason was for emergency vehicles to be able to make that turn.
Yeah, that's what I worry about,
Okay,
the fire
but,
department getting around.
but
that.
there's no plan for Grayling on the other corner right now. So I'm
Yeah,
saying,
and that-
why not
Yeah, move it up
why
to
not have this one
100 block.
on the west side instead, where there's like a wide no parking zone? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we could look into that. I mean,
Okay.
if we didn't, yeah, if we remove one of them, then, you know, that would make, you know, that would make sense to kind of push, you know.
Well, they
push
have
the-
a map with like other locations that they could,
And,
Sure, I'm
quick
just saying-
question on the Grayling ones, because I remember, I pulled up the chart of kind of like the estimated credits for each of them. I noted one of the, and I don't know if it was one of these two, but at some point there was an estimate for a Grayling one that was like 3,600 credits or something, which is like 4 times, like, that's 4 bump outs worth of credits in one bump out, and I wasn't sure if either of those was,
Yeah, I believe it was the one that sat on the church parking lot side, or on the church side of
Okay.
Grayling.
Probably from the church.
Yeah.
And if I may as well, just briefly, the other thing, so we have the option to apply for a grant. So it's a low volume road grant, so for Grayling Avenue, it actually qualifies for that. So the bulk of the costs are, we're hoping to get covered by a grant. So
I'm
they,
assuming it was all covered by a grant, it's not necessarily covered by a grant.
it's an unfunded mandate by the state.
So that's the complexity
So
of
I'm paying
that
for
is,
it, so now I'm a little more pissed off.
Well, maybe not your streets.
Yeah.
we've actually
You put 2 on my
successfully,
street, that's not fair tax wise.
the ones that have been done before, that were done previously, actually did get like 95% grant
That's what I
funding.
thought, yeah.
And this one, we're trying to get as much grant funding. The problem is, think of what Warren Marber's trying to do and multiply that by every municipality. So like, the municipality of Adelaide, I think they're, I think it was $7 million is what they had to do. It's challenging.
You're gonna be right
yeah,
now.
every municipality is challenging.
It's having the same
is-
struggle.
Is having the same struggle with identifying solutions that will meet the mandate to address the PRD and our MS4 requirements, while being, you know, fiscally responsible about these decisions. So identifying projects that are going to have the biggest bang for the buck. So, you know, the 4 that we installed originally were predominantly covered by those grants. We only have so many roads though in the borough that qualify for this low volume road grant, Grayling being one of them, and then the decision-making has just been based off of where we see the greatest sediment capture based on the drainage calculations that our engineers put together, which has led to the chosen locations that we're discussing today.
Could you just ask, like the 100 block has more, I guess, higher houses, so I would think the runoff would be greater on the 100 block of Grayling than 200 where it's just level, like I don't know where, does that drain across the street? Is there a drain even? I don't know where the drain is for 100 block.
Is that because the storm drain is on Windsor there, so once it passes over, it gets captured in the storm sewer system, so it has to be on the north side of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main storm sewer system that runs in the borough runs down Windsor. So everything that's draining north of it drains to that. And so the storm grates that you see drain into this pipe that's underneath Windsor that carries it to the stream. So anything that's south of that, so that 100 block, is not going to, we would capture something presumably within the 100 block, but the amount of sediment that would capture would be a lot lower. And then what we're
Because it's a
benefiting.
hill, so it's gotta
Well,
run
'cause
down.
what we're benefiting is that we're capturing the sediments prior to that water entering that storm drain system. So if we don't capture it north of the storm drain system, then that increases the sediment that's being collected in the storm drain. So if we can capture that, filter that out before it hits that storm pipe, all of the stormwater runoff that's happening on the 100 block is, where is that going?
Where's it
to?
going, yeah. It's gotta be running down to Windsor Avenue.
Great.
No, well, it's south of Windsor, so it's draining down to Haverford Avenue.
It can't drain to Haverford Avenue, it's too big a hill.
Is
No,
the-
it drains back to Windsor.
Oh, it does drain back to Windsor, okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you, all right.
Okay, we really appreciate you coming out today. Sorry about the short notice, but we appreciate you coming out. And I think I heard that we're gonna, take a look at this and see, what other alternatives there are. It's gonna be, we can't do that in this room today to go through,
No, I appreciate you
all 21
allowing us the
that.
time to talk about
I
it.
think the
I
intent of the
saw them
borough.
surveying last week and I was like, what are you doing?
No, I think the borough wanted to send notice to like, this is still the earlier, before it went into the great detail, so that's got the input now.
Can I ask just one question, because I think it was something that was brought up, and I think I understand the answer to it, but I didn't quite know if I connected the pieces, but just to, because this gentleman asked, actually my neighbor, because I'm on Conway as well, just a different block. He had asked about, the water's running one direction, or it's running downstream, obviously. I guess the question of the load of the one versus the other. And so what I think I was picking up on, I just want to make sure that this is right or wrong, right? I just know that intuitively sometimes when I pass that, it's a heavy rain event, it's kind of overflowing. And I assume that is kind of like, it's designed for a certain load. It's not designed to catch the entire basin that's draining in that direction, because that would probably be an asset that is so large as to be beyond the capabilities of any one single pump out. So because we're a barrel with limited space, what this would be doing is not, it would be complementary to the existing one, right? The existing one wasn't designed to capture everything that's heading in that direction. It was designed to capture what it could based off of other constraints that we were dealing with.
And to capture sediment, so like the amount
Yes.
of water is still going to flow through. It
Right.
basically captures water, slows it down, settles out sediment, water continues to.
Right, but to the extent that it's overload, right,
Correct,
that it's
yes.
not capturing sediment at that point because it hasn't had time to filter through at that. So with this, anything that it's capturing above and beyond that or complementary to that, knowing that it's a larger area that's draining that way, it's not damaging the effectiveness of the other one.
Correct.
Okay. That's what I thought I understood from what was being described and just intuitively what made sense to me, but I wanted to actually confirm whether that was the case or whether I was misunderstanding what you guys were saying. Okay.
Okay, thanks so much. So, in terms of like, how are we gonna, it sounds like we're gonna wait, like till next month to go, it's gonna slow the process down. So, I mean, could you guys take a look at this and, report back to Maggie what you find?
Yeah,
Is that-
absolutely.
Is that okay? Okay, moving on to the Narberth Avenue Bridge. So,
Alright.
go ahead.
So Jesse was not able to attend today, so I'm giving the update on his behalf. So we have really good news to report on progress related to the bridge. So I will read the status summary that he provided to me. So the Narberth Avenue Bridge replacement project is set to be advertised in early April, which means it will soon be in the hands of contractors for bidding. Bidding is the process during which contractors review the contract documents and submit their anticipated costs to complete the work. All bids will be due in early May, and typically the contract will be awarded to the lowest qualified bid. After the bidding process, there will be a few weeks before notice to proceed is given to a contractor, so we anticipate early construction actions should start late in summer including some site clearing and utility work. So I do want to just clarify here, when we talk about the work beginning, we're not talking about the bridge coming down and replacing the bridge. There's a lot of side work that has to happen before that happens. So the majority of the work is going to be stabilization, site clearing, utilities all have to come down, and all of the staging that the contractors will need to get their equipment and machinery, catenary work. There's a lot that goes along with it before we'll actually see the bridge itself coming down. So more updates and information on the construction schedule will be shared as things progress. We do also share this through our newsletter, just for the public's information. And we look forward to taking this next huge step towards the new bridge. So this is great news. So to summarize, the project is going to be advertised in April. Bids will be due in May. And then there's about a few weeks before notice to proceed is given to a contractor. So we were looking at perhaps a July or early August notice to proceed for the contractor for that work. So theoretically, sometime in early fall, we might start to see some activity on that site for some of that pre-activity construction work. So we're looking good. A couple other things. PennDOT's cultural resource professional had a question. We had a meeting with her about the representation of Indigenous people's housing structures on the bridge artwork. There was just some concern about the representation of those housing types. So we don't anticipate any sort of conversation around that delaying the advertisement, but there was a question about it, and we're looking into any legalities surrounding that representation. And Jim, I believe that had been a comment of yours.
With the legalities, what's the concern?
Just because of the funding for the project
Yeah.
is coming from the federal government, and so representation of Indigenous cultures is more regulated at that level. So we would just need to have some sort of review and sign off for that representation is what I understood.
Okay, and then there was an open question about when we would have the next formal presentation about the bridge, and there was a comment made that maybe we should wait until the contractor was hired, but I don't know.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, I'm just going through my other notes. Right, so there was an offer to have a presentation on kind of the bridge and the construction sequencing and all of those things. If we wanted to wait though, so this can happen after the contract is awarded, but before notice to proceed. If we don't want to wait until notice to proceed, once the contractor is selected, we can have them come in. And since we anticipate that if bids are due May 8th, then a contractor will be selected at some point after that date. So then we can schedule with them to present at an upcoming infrastructure meeting about that schedule, and we can ask questions and learn a little bit more about the process at that time.
Well, I mean, 2 points about that. One, it's going to be in the summer, so
Right.
it's going to be hard to get in-person attendance from too many people, but it's important that we do it. The other is, maybe that is a good time to do it because it's before they've made their final decision about how it's all going to play out, and they can actually listen to feedback about what the concerns people have were.
Sure. Again, a lot of this, I believe, is going to be pretty heavily regulated by
I see.
the various other state and federal agencies. So once the bid is awarded, I don't know how much kind of
I see, we can't change it.
changing we can do. At least, all of the design things are pretty finalized at that point. But certainly, this is going to have an impact on people's movement throughout the borough.
Right.
With the stabilization, the bridge has been closed for quite a while.
Right.
We do anticipate that most of the construction equipment will be in the right-of-way for Amtrak, so it shouldn't necessarily impact kind of too much the surrounding area, but we want to have an opportunity for people to learn about the project and ask questions.
Okay.
So if it's either at an infrastructure meeting or we have another kind of public meeting about this at some other point in time, we can look ahead at that for future once we kind of have a better understanding of who the contractor is and their availability.
Great. Any thoughts from either of the committee members?
That makes total sense to me,
Okay.
and then I guess just maybe, because for the businesses up there, I assume they've already been impacted by the closure, but if there's gonna be things parked and just having that coordination so that they have a
Right.
clear understanding of it.
Right, yeah, so certainly anybody who's going to be directly impacted, so any of those businesses up there, we will be in communication with them, but, you know, the broader public as well,
Yeah, makes sense. Great, thank you.
okay?
Okay, and I guess, any other updates?
Updates on the road program.
Oh, yeah, good, go ahead.
So we're on track to get that sent out to bid in either the second or third week of April. So we'll have that on the street pretty soon. Also the sidewalk project that where we're trying to update the sidewalks along borough-owned properties. We have draft plans set up for that, so we're getting those finalized, getting the contract specs finalized for that. So we should hopefully have that on the street within about a month or so.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you folks for coming today.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
yeah, thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
listening.